been in a position where I think the parties just expect me to do what I'm told. Very odd, the position for a leader. But now I'm no longer, as from November, the leader of the party any longer, I can say as much as I like. So I've already written my first article in this vein, and that is that we should be confident in our own policies, in our commitment to environmental sustainability and combating climate change. That has to be our focus, has to be the main focus of politics across the world, not just in Scotland or in England or Wales or Europe. It has to be a main focus. And we are best placed, if you like, to push everybody else. I was going to say lead. It's a bit difficult to lead from the back, but to push things in the right direction. We shouldn't be distracted by worrying about whether we're on the left or the right of politics. These, to me, are complete distractions. But there are others in the party who would like to have us identified as centrist or slightly left-centre or a lot left-centre. It doesn't bother me how people identify us. They should. Our policies identify us. What we do identify us. Okay? Judge us not by the clothes we wear, but what we do.
Do you think there's perhaps suspicion with the roots of the movement being like the campaign for nuclear disarmament and things like that, and alignment with the socialist movements in Europe? Do you not think there's perhaps suspicion that we've got a left-wing agenda as much as a green agenda?
No, let's take some of those anti-movements, right? And I hope I'd be very keen that the party moves on from, people are far clearer about what we don't want in their minds than what we do want. And that's always been a little bit of a weight on us. And we too easily, I think, on occasions in the past have slipped into campaigning furiously against things we don't want, not quite as furiously against the things that we do, for, or other things that we do want. But the campaign for nuclear disarmament is not a left-wing movement. In fact, most of the people that turn up for Faslane, for instance, I've been going to Faslane for 15, 20 years. They're not members of any political party. Or if they are, they're certainly not most of the members of the Socialist Party. When you go to demonstrations, they get a lot of support from the SSP. They get a lot of support for us. The SSP are better at getting their banners on, so it looks as if it's a socialist demonstration. CND, I think, would actually have preferred most over the last 20 years that it was non-party political. The parties did not bring their banners, Green, Socialist, SNP, or whatever. That it was seen as a people's movement. In the early days of the CND, I used to go on the early autumn Muscle marches. I don't remember party banners being on those marches. No, you get 100,000 people without a party banner. Then it started to get politicised. The unions turned up, the Labour Party turned up. Never saw the Conservatives.
If I could ask a question, in recent years there's been an explosion with the consciousness of most people about green issues, thanks to things like Naked Media Truth and big Liber concerts. I mean, now that it's on the public's consciousness, what's the next step for green politics? I suppose this is the point where parties in the different countries can have to step up to the plate. So, as a green party in Scotland,
well, we continue. I mean, when you say next step, it just means that there is now more of an open door for us to push on. And the next step is the next step after the last step. In other words, we're facing the same direction as we did before. But there is more to achieve. But right at the moment, if you look around the other parties, not so much their policies, because they are beginning to change their policies, but what they actually do, and the inconsistencies between what they say they recognise as being important and what they actually do, then there's still a lot for us to do to point out that the vacuum in British politics is not the fact that the left is in temporary disarray at the moment, and temporarily disorganised from the point where Tommy Sheridan, bless his heart, at least managed to get all these parties together and try and weld them into an effective political force. the vacuum actually is between the ears of the main political parties, because they still don't actually get it. How can you try to leave air transport, for instance, out of the calculations for carbon emissions when it's a major emitter? Well, the reason they want to do it is that they have a perception that there will be an effect on tourism, which would be bad for us. Well, actually, if you look at the figures, tourism is a net exporter of money, which is not an importer. We spend more money, when we're outside. More British money goes out of the UK from our side of tourism and comes into Britain from our side. So a general reduction in tourism, flying tourism levels would actually benefit us. But the sheer damage to the environment from air transport, and the fact that they're planning on expanding Heathrow, expanding Edinburgh Airport, where if you spent the same money improving rail transport between Birmingham, London, and Edinburgh, Glasgow, and London, the savings would be astronomical in comparison. The difference between 20 years from now, instead of having gone one step forward and two steps back in terms of pollution of the atmosphere, it would be the other way around, 2, 3, 4, 5 steps forward and only one step back. They don't get it in their commitment to expanding roads. They could have, across Europe, they're still stepping away from European regulations that would reduce the, not necessarily the part, but would reduce the carbon footprint of car engines. We knew how to do this 30 years ago. We could halve it now, but it's not being done. A whole lot of very, very simple things, which if politicians across Europe cooperated, could be brought into effect. Take insulation. Now, one lot. People, the big parties are quite happy to big arguments about nuclear power as against other forms of generation, because they love a generation argument. It's been going on for a long time. It distracts people from reality. In fact, what we should be doing is very simple things, like cutting down on the amount of electricity that we use, because an electricity is only a tiny part of the whole thing anyway. Most of the pollution comes from coal and gas and oil. Some of which isn't just making electricity, but in terms of our consumption of energy, electricity is about 20 to 30% of our total consumption. The other energy sources we use are distributed amongst all the other sources. They're happy to have these arguments. What we really need to be doing is, which isn't totally popular amongst the electorate, is insulation. I've talked to councillors who tried to give away insulation in Renfrew, in Newcastle, and people don't want it because of the disruption to the houses. They don't want people coming in, even for a week. For them, it's too much. Reduce our bills, they say, cut electricity, but don't do anything as disruptive as asking us to stand aside while we insulate our house. Well, that mindset has got to change, because that is what gives you permanent insulation, if you like, against the problems of fuel price rises. Because you use so little of it when the fuel price goes up, it doesn't make that much difference to you. We could reduce electricity consumption in houses by 40% within a few years by a few simple things, and probably by 60% by full-scale retrofitting of drought-proofing efficient boilers and insulation. And